Imagine a queen so powerful, so dangerous, so absolutely terrifying to her enemies, that after her death, an entire empire spent centuries trying to erase her from history. No statues. No textbooks. No lessons in school. Just silence. But here's the thing about truth: you can bury it, but you cannot kill it. Today we're bringing her back. Her name was Nzinga, Queen of Ndongo and Matamba in Central Africa. She fought the Portuguese Empire for over 30 years. She never surrendered. She never broke. And she won. This is the story they didn't want you to know. Stay with me. The year is 1583. West Central Africa is not weak. The kingdom of Ndongo is powerful, organized, and prosperous, built on trade, agriculture, and strong military tradition. But on the coastline, a shadow is spreading. The Portuguese have arrived. And they didn't come as guests. They came with ships, soldiers, and chains. The transatlantic slave trade is growing into the most brutal business operation in human history. Every year, thousands of Africans are being ripped from their families and loaded onto ships headed west. And Ndongo, Nzinga's homeland, sits right in the heart of the raiding zone. The storm is coming. And a queen is being born into it. Nzinga was born around 1583 to Ndongo, the king of Ndongo. From the very beginning, she was different. While most daughters of royalty were kept far from politics and war, her father saw something extraordinary in her. He brought her into councils. He let her observe diplomacy. He taught her strategy. She trained in combat. She studied languages, power, and persuasion. By the time she was a teenager, Nzinga understood one thing deeply: the world does not give power to women, especially African women facing European colonizers. You have to take it. You have to earn it. And you have to be smarter than every man in the room. In 1622, Nzinga's brother sent her as his royal ambassador to negotiate with the Portuguese governor in Luanda. Already radical, a woman representing an African kingdom before colonial power. But what happened in that meeting room became one of history's greatest moments. The Portuguese governor had chairs for himself and his men. For Nzinga? A floor mat. A deliberate insult, designed to place her below him, physically and symbolically. Nzinga looked at the mat. Then she turned to one of her attendants. She gestured calmly. The attendant dropped to hands and knees. Nzinga sat on his back and faced the governor as a complete equal. The negotiation could begin. Nzinga wasn't just theatrical, she was surgical. In those Luanda negotiations, she secured a peace treaty, demanded Portuguese forces stop raiding Ndongo for slaves, and pushed for the release of her captured brother. Then she made her most calculated move yet. She converted to Christianity and was baptized, taking the name Ana de Souza, with the Portuguese governor himself as her godfather. Was it faith? Absolutely not. It was strategy. She understood that if she spoke their language, used their symbols, and operated inside their framework, she became far harder to dismiss and far more powerful at the table. Every move was intentional. Every smile was calculated. The Portuguese broke every single promise. Slave raids continued. They installed puppet rulers loyal to Lisbon inside Ndongo's borders. They treated the peace treaty like a joke. Nzinga's brother, humiliated and overwhelmed, died in 1624, some say murdered, some say by his own hand. Nzinga stepped forward and took the throne. And the Portuguese lost their minds. A woman ruler? One who had negotiated as their equal and outmaneuvered their governor? They refused to recognize her. They backed a rival male king, someone they could control, and declared her an illegitimate ruler. It was a declaration of war. And Nzinga accepted it without hesitation. Outnumbered. Outgunned. Facing one of the most powerful empires on earth. Nzinga's response? Build something they'd never seen before. She recruited the Mbangala, legendary, feared warrior bands who pledged loyalty to no kingdom. She didn't just hire them. She became one of them. She adopted their customs, their warrior identity, their tactics. She was documented leading her troops personally, dressed for battle, commanding with complete authority. But her most radical move? She opened her army to escaped slaves and Portuguese army deserters. Every man Portugal lost to fear, cruelty, or conscience, Nzinga gained. She was turning the empire's own violence against itself. Slowly. Deliberately. Brilliantly. Nzinga knew she couldn't beat the Portuguese in open battle. They had cannons, muskets, and ships full of reinforcements. So she rewrote the rules of engagement entirely. She took her forces into the dense jungle interior, terrain the Portuguese feared and couldn't navigate. She launched fast, devastating raids on supply lines. She cut off food and ammunition. She struck without warning and vanished before they could respond. This was guerrilla warfare, centuries before the term existed. Portuguese commanders wrote letters home describing their absolute frustration. They couldn't pin her down, couldn't predict her, couldn't stop her. She was fighting a 30-year war and she was winning the psychological battle completely. Forced out of Ndongo by Portuguese pressure, Nzinga made a move that revealed her true strategic genius. Rather than retreating in defeat, she expanded. She marched her forces into the neighboring kingdom of Matamba, a powerful, independent state, and seized the throne. Just like that, she went from a queen in exile to ruler of an even larger territory. Matamba became her new base of operations. She fortified it. She built trade networks. She created alliances with neighboring kingdoms. What the Portuguese thought was her running away was actually Nzinga repositioning. She was playing a longer game than they could comprehend. And she was just getting started. Here is where Nzinga showed the world she was a global strategist. She knew that to defeat the Portuguese, she needed a European partner, someone with guns, ships, and their own reasons to hate Lisbon. She found them. The Dutch. In the 1640s, Nzinga entered into a military alliance with the Dutch West India Company, who were actively competing with Portugal across Africa and the Americas. Together, they launched coordinated attacks on Portuguese positions. In 1647, Nzinga's forces, fighting alongside Dutch soldiers, dealt the Portuguese a devastating military defeat at the Battle of Ngolime. An African queen had just used European rivalries as her weapon. The chessboard was hers. The Portuguese, humiliated and desperate, did what colonial powers always do when they can't win fairly: they got dirty. They spread propaganda across Europe, painting Nzinga as a savage, a cannibal, a monster. They sent missionaries to undermine her authority from within. They bribed her own generals. They kidnapped her sisters, holding them hostage to weaken her resolve. One sister, Mukambu, was captured and held for years. But Nzinga did not break. She kept fighting. She kept negotiating. She kept building. Every time the Portuguese thought they had finally broken her spirit, she came back harder. Stronger. More dangerous. They had created an enemy they fundamentally could not destroy. For 30 years, Nzinga fought. Think about that for a moment. 30 years. Most people cannot sustain one difficult year. This woman sustained 3 decades of active resistance against a colonial empire, through military campaigns, political negotiations, shifting alliances, personal losses, and constant betrayal. She lost territory and reclaimed it. She lost allies and found new ones. She was forced to flee and always returned. Portuguese governors came and went, each one tasked with finally defeating her, each one failing. She outlasted them all. Her endurance wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, intellectual, and strategic. She refused to accept the idea that her people were meant to be enslaved. Full stop. By the 1650s, something remarkable happened. The Portuguese, exhausted, humiliated, and unable to conquer her, came to Nzinga asking for peace. Not the other way around. She negotiated the 1657 peace treaty from a position of power, securing recognition of her sovereignty over Matamba, the return of her sister Macambu, and restrictions on Portuguese slave raiding in her territory. She was in her 70s. She had been fighting since her 40s. And she ended the war on her terms, not theirs. The Portuguese Empire, which had conquered vast stretches of Africa and South America, sat across from a 70-year-old African queen, and blinked first. Let that sink in. After Nzinga died peacefully in 1663 at around 80 years old, the Portuguese got to work. They couldn't defeat her in life, so they tried to defeat her in memory. Her story was buried in colonial archives, rewritten in missionary accounts, and stripped from mainstream history books. European historians described her as a curiosity, a primitive warrior woman, rather than what she truly was, one of the most brilliant military and political strategists of the 17th century. For centuries, schoolchildren in Africa, Europe, and America learned nothing about her. The erasure was deliberate, systematic, and almost complete. Almost. Because truth, as we said at the start, cannot be killed. Today, Nzinga stands tall in Angola's capital, Luanda, a massive bronze statue in the city's central square. She is finally getting pieces of the recognition she always deserved. But statues are not enough. What matters is that we tell this story. That we say her name. That we understand what she represents, not just for African history, but for all of human history. A woman who refused subjugation. A leader who outthought an empire. A queen who proved that resistance is possible, that dignity can be defended, and that no power on earth can erase what is truly great. Her name is Nzinga. And now you know. Share this story.